Welcome to an episode of Peach Pit. We are here with some Week 1 review, some Week 2 preview for some PCH and FSC district events going on. We're excited to now have some content to cover from actual competition this season. Instead of just making things up and predicting silly things, we now get to talk about actual competition. With that said, before we get started, we have to make our usual disclaimer that any views or opinions shared on the show are solely that of the individual contributor and do not reflect the views of Peach Pit, any FRC team, First, Georgia First, South Carolina First, or any of their affiliates and sponsors. So the idea behind the show is to serve as an FRC talk show that focuses primarily on the Peachtree District and First South Carolina District. We're going to be talking about a variety of topics, so don't be surprised if you see us drop some hot takes. Ultimately, we're hoping to provide some entertaining and engaging discussions. With that, we'll go ahead and do some host introductions. My name's Kellen. I'm a longtime firster, current somewhat long-distance mentor for 1833, but also now plugged in with Team 10482, the Buzzbots out of Athens.
I am David Allred out of Lawrence and Fountain in South Carolina, mentor and drive coach for Team 4451 Robots Garage, and our secondary team, Innovation Station 4864.
I'm Brian Carlson. I'm with Night Robotics number 6829, and I'm now an electrical mentor.
Yeah.
So if it catches on fire, it's your okay.
Oh, I've already told the students. I'm like, if this thing breaks down, it's not your fault. It's mine.
Yeah. I mean, you got to live up to your team name, right?
Yeah.
That's why you do it. Ignite, yeah. Just
All right. We'll also give a shout out to Anupam and Thomas, a couple of our usual hosts, for any recovery from this past weekend and for either being sick or just being entirely spent on robots. So hopefully they're doing well. Also give a shout out to our producer Ian, who's making things happen in the background and is not as much of a witch as we thought he possibly could have been. With that said, we'll move into our Week 1 reaction for our Gainesville event. We'll give a shout out here to our award winners. We had event winners of 9496, Link from North Carolina, coming in from out of state, taking the blue banner. Congratulations to them and their partners, 8866, 4240, and a backup robot, 9522. Impressive sweep through the double elimination bracket to come out on top as the 1 seed. So congratulations to them. We also wound up with impact winners of 4188 and EI winners of 7538. So congratulations to those 2 teams. I don't believe there was then a Rookie All-Star award awarded. I'm trying to recall how many rookies were at this event. But then we also had a Rising All-Star Award awarded for the first time, which was new this year to Team 9260, built for Bib. Always a fun team to interact with, so congratulations to them on that award. All right, with awards wrapped up, let's go ahead and jump in. What are the initial reactions to this Reefscape game that we're seeing? We've seen so far in the Peachtree District. We'll see our first viewing of it in South Carolina this upcoming weekend. But what are the initial reactions?
Oh, y'all played. I'm waiting for you guys.
Yeah. So it was great to meet Link and Caleb. They're one of their mentors over there, and a great team. We happened to have burgers and bots on that Friday night, so great to get to know them in a little bit. And they came in. They are a second-year team, but they have a lot of experience coming in with it. It showed. They executed really well. They're very smooth with what they did. They basically own level 4. They're really effective at that. It's interesting that they did not have a climb. They're just like, so first off, I'll say this: on the stream, you can't see anything of what's going on for the climb. It's like when Bean was on the other side, I knew they were climbing. I'm like, I think I see a bumper moving.
Yeah.
But I don't believe that Link had that climbability. So they just focused on we're gonna coral and we're just gonna beat you that way. Get the win and get the Auton.
Right. There were several teams across the country that did that. No climber, very good at coral, ranked 1, wiped it out. I think Chill Out was a team that did that, 1778 or something like that. So yeah, like I said last week, a couple of high auto coral and you're ahead of the game, so you don't need to end. But you got to be good on the
Yep.
auto, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And fast in the middle, and they were. I did watch a lot of their video.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think obviously as the season goes, those other RPs are going to get more and more valuable. But right now, if you're able to wrap up that win and get that Auton ranking point every single time, you're in a really good spot to do well in this game.
Yeah.
The consistency on climbing wasn't there, but it certainly helped boost a couple teams in the rankings. And then we really didn't see much for the Coral RP. Unless I'm mistaken, I believe Link wound up being close within 1 or 2 Coral on a couple of occasions, but I don't believe that RP was secured, meaning I was wrong in my donut shop bet that a 6 RP match would happen week 1. So missed out on that one, but it's still really cool to see that we're in the neighborhood of it. I think as the season goes, it's going to happen more and more often. With as people get that coral routine down, especially as teams kind of look ahead to either predict match outcomes to say, okay, we're comfortably winning this. We're only scoring 5 up top and then moving down right away instead of just loading up L4 with coral before moving down, to have some more intentional strategy around pursuing that coral RP.
Right.
Yeah.
I was looking at the OPR data. So y'all have what, about 6 deep climbers, 6, 7 deep climbers? Is that about right?
I think so. From what I was looking at for the insights from the Gainesville event.
Yeah.
I think there are some other attempted ones that just didn't wind up panning out.
Right.
That might then come any further to be later, or as teams get their robots figured out. But
Gotcha.
But yeah, I think a lot of teams are in a similar boat with the robot architecture, that it's difficult to try adding in a climb once you kind of got your robot together, without significant modifications or ways to get that coral shoot out of the way. Though a lot of teams have taken up a lot of real estate on the robot. But
yeah, interesting thing also, even teams that were able to manipulate coral, right? Usually we're just pulling out and dropping them and just focusing on coral. Sorry,
algae.
Manipulate algae. They were just picking up and dropping them, getting them out of the way, and then just focusing on the coral. And there's only, I think, IHOT was doing, and
Lambda,
Lambda, not Lambert, right?
well, Lambert's the high school.
Lambert High School,
Okay.
Lambda robots.
Yeah, right. So those were the 2 that were making a diligent effort as far as a strategy, doing the algae.
Well, how did the algae on the ground affect the game at all for you guys? A lot of beachings, just annoyance.
I saw a couple beachings. I didn't see too many. Otherwise, I think it wound up being an annoyance to some degree. I was over by the practice field most of the event, so I didn't see a lot of the action. But from watching some video from the event and other matches through week 1, it did seem like there was very much an intentional strategy to either kind of herd coral to the other team's climbing area or to their coral stations, just to make it, again, a harder thing to navigate to or have to navigate through in order to get where they wanted to go.
Yeah.
How about coral on the ground? Was that a problem?
I think some teams had difficulty with it, especially when it's dropped right in front of the coral station to get close enough. I know some teams talked and were really happy about their coral shoot designs, because I think 5293 was one of them, but just that even with Coral in the way that their chute is designed, such that however that the Coral is falling, that the arc is allowing for Coral to be in the way as well.
Right.
Yeah. Interesting that during elims there was some defense being played, but there was a lot of defense that were sort of still getting penalties. It's difficult to see on the far side to know if you're sufficiently away from the protected zone, right? So definitely there was defense being played in to lesser degrees impactful. It's still kind of I didn't see it really good aggressive D that was effective, that really impacted things. I saw some other videos from other competitions where they maybe play a little differently. So I think D will evolve over the next week or two.
Yeah, I saw some good stuff. I watched a few more matches with 832 through elims, and I know at least in one of the quals matches they wound up playing defense when they had played against Link and Bean in a match, that they were the robot that had come over for playing defense, which I think had something to do with Bean later picking them for eliminations. But they had some good driving from what I saw, that they did a decent job of avoiding penalties. I think it's hard, again, like you said, for the sight lines across the field to know where that pin count is at, because 3 seconds can go pretty quickly. But also to know that when it does start, you have to get pretty decent ways away in order to actually clear out the count before re-engaging.
Right.
Otherwise, again, that 3 seconds happens in a heartbeat.
So the one thing I will make a word of advice for drive coaches is when you're playing that type of D roll, somebody has to watch the referee, because they will stop the count, but the arm's still out. That means they're going to resume it, and you quickly get penalties. The other thing I was kind of curious of, if I disengage and you drive at me, doesn't that automatically reset the pin count?
I believe it's once you're removed from the area that the initial pin was engaged in.
Yeah.
But once you're out of that immediate area, I believe the count is waived off.
Yeah, I think you have to move about 2 robot links, about 6 feet.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm backing away and you're driving towards me, then
my pin's done.
I know, and that's what I'm saying, right? So, when you just don't back away, just make sure you understand where they're going, where you're going, because
otherwise you'd have the offensive bot chasing the defender down.
I know, right?
To stay bumper to bumper across the field. That'd be nuts.
Well, right. And with how the Coral stations are set up, it provides a little bit of a predicament for the referees, because they have to decide, all right, who engaged who in the pin, and who am I calling this pin count on? Is it red or blue? But I did like some of the driving I saw out of 832. I think 7538 was one of the other upper tier defense bots at the event. But 832 would very intentionally, like if there was a robot trying to get in towards the Coral station, 832 is spinning counter to them in trying to screw their way into the gap. Yeah, so instead of engaging in a, I guess, clockwise motion that would engage them with the other robot's bumpers first, they would spin in a way that would push themselves between that other robot and the wall, making it look I think actually be less of a pin and more of a, I'm trying to get into that gap than trying to actually pin you against a wall. So it's some good driving on 832's part to be spinning in that direction to kind of wedge in between you, the robot and the wall.
Spinning the other way to get to the wall.
Well, if I'm pushing you on the sides, I'm not pinning you, right? It's when I get you from behind where I get you the pin, right?
Well, no, it's a little more vague than that, because if you trap somebody in the corner, that's a pin. You don't have to touch.
Well, agree.
Yeah, what I'm saying is, if the offense robot's driving in here and 832 is coming from this way, they're spinning this way to try catching the front lip of the offense bot and peel them off of the wall, instead of coming in this way, where they're then touching the opponent's bumpers first and pushing them into that wall. Right. So it wound up being
robot's the one pinning.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Or that you're at least not engaging in what would be a more visible pin and allow you to play defense a little bit more instead of having to vacate the area as quickly.
No
So
coral
some
bomb.
good moves there.
Did y'all have any coral bomb incidents of whack a robot to death? Or
I saw plenty of it on the practice field. I gave warnings to a few teams of, hey, you should look into that because it looks like it keeps dropping right on some expensive electronics. We did see, I think 1683 had to add a little kind of skirt at the bottom of their arm because I think they would get some coral stuck at the base of their arm. So they just added a little piece of fabric that whenever the arm went up, it kind of stretched out and would push out any coral that might get down there. So that was a good move on their part.
Yeah, got it.
Let's see. Any other, I guess, innovative strategies? Like Elim's was pretty. It seemed pretty straightforward. I think Coral really ruled the day for that first alliance, being able to put up so many Coral that it was hard to keep up with, even though they didn't have climbs. That they were putting up so many Coral it didn't matter. I think Alliance two wound up giving them a run in the finals that at least put it in the window of possibility of having the climb, if both climbs happened and a couple penalty points weren't there, that it was a close match, but wound up getting blown out a little bit more in match 2.
Anybody play triple offense?
Yeah, there were some triple offense options.
In limbs, yeah.
In Elims, yeah, there were. Let's see, I think I'd have to go back and watch a couple of the matches, but I think by the time you get to Alliance 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, I think for the majority, those robots were playing defense as a third bot.
Right.
But yeah, the depth of the event didn't at this point of the season really allow for triple offense too much. But if anything, it was just another robot trying to add a couple game pieces lower down on the reef, where that capability of scoring was still at.
Yeah, I hate to keep peppering y'all with questions, but did y'all have any pure kit bots play in the elimination?
We had a pure
Captain.
Not quite pure kit bot. It was a kit bot variation. 3318 put together impressive performance. This is a team that I don't think has competed since 2017.
2017.
But wound up building so this is they built a kit bot shoot, but put it on top of a swerve drive, I believe. And I'm trying to recall, Brian.
Second.
Do you remember if they had a climb at all? I think they had a climb on top, but I don't know if it was ever used.
Yeah, I don't recall seeing it. But they ended up ranking third.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was very effective. Early
they wanted to be in fourth. They were just behind Marist.
Oh, okay.
Wow. Yeah. So yes, a swerve kit bot. Okay, not a pure one.
Okay. Also good to see Lunar Robotics and Special Ops.
Mm-hmm.
Special Ops have been around for their 4th year, first time they made it to event, and they were on the field and moving. And same with a lot of help with from several teams. I don't want to name them all because I know I'll miss them. 3 or 4 teams to help get Lunar going. And I know like Innovation Academy was helping a lot with special ops to get them finally competing at a competition for the first time. So a week beforehand, I had to explain what a drive team was to them. So
gotcha. Well, I mean, but
yep.
Right. I mean, that's very important for us to pass that knowledge to people that are just, what's going on.
Yeah, I'm working with a rookie team this year, but I'm trying to figure out what those mental flags are that I'm missing for having done this so long, of how to best prepare them for an event and things I might be missing out on. So good to keep a list of those things.
Well, I had a list of one thing when I was talking with Special Ops. One thing you focus on: keep your connectors connected.
Yeah.
And not on fire.
Yeah. Michigan 2016.
Yes. Whatever.
All right, let's go through and give any shout outs to any special performances know, I guess Brian, you wound up being at the event for some amount of time, but I'll kind of scroll through the list here and give any other shout outs in addition to the teams we just kind of called out. But I'll give a shout out to Lambda for a awesome bounce back performance. I know they've had some real struggles on Saturday, but I think it was their first match on Sunday that they came in and wound up making 5 of their 6 barge shots. And I think we're floating on level 9 after that for then being picked by, I think, the 8th Alliance as their 3rd bot.
That's
But
great.
if they're able to increase that shooting performance, I think they're going to be an absolute steal going forward. I guess same thing for iHot if they're able to kind of dial in that shot of theirs. I know that both of those teams spent quite a while on the practice field, so it's cool to see them working their way through the event. Let's see. I think 8736 and 5293 are a couple fun ones for the robots they're building and kind of some automation they're working on. Let's see. 8866 had a phenomenal performance. They have a great looking robot. I think it's a Rembrandt's style, if I'm not mistaken, for kind of a pass-through elevator with both a internal coral gripper and then algae mechanism as well. I don't think they wound up using the algae mechanism as much, just for focusing on coral, but it's a skill set that is there. Will be dangerous going forward. No climber on the robot, which again says something about strategy this early in the season, but we'll see if that winds up getting added on later or how that strategy improve or changes going forward for them. But again, very well done on their part. I think I saw some good stuff out of 5608 for putting up some good scores.
So for 8866, came in driving well. They're the first pick. The interesting thing is they're going to probably play it again with potentially Link in week 3. They're going to North Carolina, right? So when they get to DCMP, they're going to have 3 competition under their belt. So you can go to DEs and get some practice, but it's just a little different when you do it in a competition. Even as a district, it's a different experience. And I think they're gonna go pretty far this year.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing it. Let's see. Bean had their very first PCH official event. I know they had their grits robot, which wound up being an overly ambitious design, but that wasn't really the intent of where they were going. But had an impressive showing for seeding second. Wound up missing out on a number of climb RPs or barge RPs and auton RPs. So looking forward to seeing them better convert on those opportunities going forward. But wound up having some good coral scoring. They did pull out a 2 coral auton for the first time in elims, which is a fun time to get something like that working. So they have the groundwork in place for some more automated scoring as well. If you didn't notice in elims, they kind of pivoted to a strategy that the teams used in the past for kind of lining up with a known good spot. So you'd see them line up on L2 with a coral, say, okay, I'm happy I'm lined up here. And then they'd go all the way up without moving and score on L4 just to say, okay, I know I'm in a good spot. I'm going to go ahead and score. So that wound up being any more consistent L4 scoring than them trying to drive around with the elevator all the way up, trying to fine tune that position. But looking forward to there being some more automation and vision involved in their scoring going forward. I know they're signed up for a lot of DE hours in the next week and a half or so. Let's see. I'll also give a shout out to former team 1746. I know that Robot had some bumps in the road for getting their mechanisms working as desired. Again, a team that spent quite a while on the practice field, so always good to see efforts going towards getting things working as intended. They look to have a kind of telescoping arm with both a coral and algae manipulator on the end of it. Again, something that I don't think wound up getting working during the week, but looks like it could turn into something as the season goes on. So encouraged by by the looks of it, and hope they get all the finer details ironed out there. So
Yeah.
best of luck to that team as well.
And 1683 Tucson Titans did quite well.
The Nifty award winner.
Yeah.
Apparently, we got in trouble for saying nifty too many times. I don't know who did that, but
I didn't say that.
Yeah. Yeah. They got kept started good and got more experience. I know they have a little bit of a unique design with the arm on a pivot, or the elevator on a pivot. I like to say it was the Auto 2016 bot designed to play the 2025 game. So they did, teaming up with Bean and going into the finals, they did pretty well. And Howard, good isn't good enough.
So, since Thomas isn't here, somebody had to do it. I will mention something actually nifty about the robot. They do have this cool can range sensor. I think they were actually working through some difficulties with it on the side of their intake, but they actually, so their intake is any wider, but can measure the distance between the side of the intake and wherever the coral's at, and then use that offset to then actually line up with the reef instead of having to have it driver control. So it's cool to see that kind of intelligence built in for being able to make those fine-tuning adjustments. But again, looking forward to some refinement on that robot and seeing where they're able to get it during the season. Also mentioned 6340 Marist had a good showing. They had wound up ranking third and eclipsing long-time high-ranking team. 3318 was at the top of the rankings for a good while of the event, and I think it was a last couple match effort to get 6340 up and above. But they were doing a really good job of scoring L2 and L3, I believe, and wound up kind of working on getting better and better at L4. So again, another robot. Looking forward to seeing how they do the rest of the season. But with that said, I think we can.
Yeah, one other team. I saw 7104, the Bot Brothers from Savannah.
Mm-hmm.
Got a chance to talk with them last year. They were getting ready to. They weren't making it to elims. They were getting ready to pack up, and then 1771 called a backup bot. And they were their backup bot. They got the win. They made it to DCMP. So I saw them competing there, and I was rooting for them because I know that. And they actually got selected to go to the elims and did well there. So glad to see them.
Gotcha. I will also make any reference to what wound up taking a good chunk of time in the double elimination tournament for some conference that happened with the referees and robot inspectors for what situation that happened with Team Bean's bumpers. Won't spend too much time on it. The team has made any more public posts on a post that popped up on Chief Delphi with any clarification of what happened on the team side. Very happy to see that wind up being cleared up any more publicly. I think there's a lot to be said for how the volunteers wound up handling the situation field side in order to make sure the right calls were made. So I think that number 2 seed Alliance got really lucky in being able to win a 2v3 after Bean was pulled off the field for all the right reasons, and then to be able to skirt through that with 1683 really putting up a whole bunch of coral. I think Brian texted me. He's like, "What happened here, and why wasn't there any defense on 1683?"
Right, I'm like, play D.
But again, for the any of the controversies surrounding Bean's bumpers, I'd again recommend checking out the Chief Delphi post. That again includes a post from the team clarifying anything on their side for the situation. But
so the one thing in elims during that match, right? You get a D bot and you got 3 over there, it gets congested.
Mm-hmm. So with that said, we'll move on to some week 2 previews. We'll go ahead and jump in and cover our first South Carolina district event in Hartsville. David, take it away.
All right, ready. So first South Carolina is heading back to Hartsville. If you know, it's in the northeast part of the state near Darlington Motor Speedway. And we were not there last year. We went to the first event there in 2023. And the defending champions from that year were some team 4451, so to speak, and then 1102 making magic, and 4748 the auto bots. So this year we are sporting 35 South Carolina teams at Hartsville, up from 25 total teams last year, and a surprise visit from a team from Michigan, that one team. And they are coming down to the South once again this year. Last year, they came to Virginia in week 1 and were finalists in that event. And this year, they're coming week 2. So anytime a Michigan team comes down, trouble, trouble, trouble. They are built for play usually. So I predict that they will do very well at this event, possibly definitely making the finals, if not winning the event. That won't necessarily hurt South Carolina teams because all the other South Carolina teams will be there. They're not taking points from anybody. They're taking points from everybody. So not a big deal, and we welcome them down. It should be a very good time. I'd love to talk to them. Other teams of note is we grew by 10 teams. 5 of them are brand new. 3 of them are second teams with an existing team. One of which is our team, our second team, and then 2 returning veterans. So that's how we got from 25 to 35. So it should be interesting to see, 5 completely new teams, and just like you mentioned, Kellen, explaining to the drive team, how all this stuff works and how scouting works and how alliance selection works. We spent a lot of time on that. So in preparation for that, South Carolina has created a South Carolina Scouting Alliance, and we've provided reserve seating for that alliance and a free distribution of data. You do not have to participate to get the data. So everybody at the event will get the data, and it'll be analyzed and sorted for them. They can make their own decisions about what they want to do with that data, but we're going to provide it for them. I think right now we have, somewhere between 8 and 10 teams are in that alliance actually providing scouts, and 343 is providing the software for us, and we thank them for that. So it should be a really interesting part of the event. As far as predictions go, I believe this again will be a choral event, not a algae or climbing event. Although I'm assuming the Michigan team will be sporting a climber, and I know I've seen about 3 climbers in South Carolina. There's probably more. I just haven't seen a lot of robots, so I can't really tell you. As far as other picks, since I haven't seen that many robots, it's very difficult for me to tell. I will tell you that there are a few teams that are a little behind where they normally are, and so there'd probably be a lot of people still working out some kinks in their first event, because essentially we're playing the same event 3 times. So I think everybody may have overbit some things, and they were shooting for district champs, not doing well at a qualifier, in essence. So I think a lot of teams bit off a lot, but we'll work it out. I've seen a couple of interesting designs from the Ramrods and Making Magic that will be really good if they get those designs going. The surprise I've seen to me is the continued improvement of Due West Robotics. They have focused their game this year on a couple of elements in the game instead of trying to take on the whole game. And they've been up and running for several weeks and been practicing. And they've come to our field several times. Last Saturday, we ended up having 8 teams at our field practicing. It was very crowded. But they were doing consistently the best. I haven't seen the Midland teams or the down south teams or the PD region teams, other than a few CAD shots. So we'll see. But I think Coral will reign the day. And if Michigan brings an auto coral and a climber, I think they're ranking 1.
Yeah, that's the thing. Having a climber is one thing. Having it work every single time is the big deal.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
if you can do that, you're a ways ahead of the competition for access to those up to 12 additional ranking points if you can grab them. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think the fun one you had showed us. I don't think we wound up covering it too directly on our reveal night, but I think they were on the fun reveal night for 343 was a fun robot for the double coral shoot.
The double coral. And I saw the Neutrons 125s revealed.
Yeah, I just thought of that.
They did it a different way where they have the coral on the right side and it flips to the left. So they're playing everything centered. And so they got the algae here, coral here, flips to the other side. It was like, what?
Well, so
it was very effective.
I hadn't thought about it, but it's a really good way to break down the complexity. While it might seem like a more complex design, it simplifies a lot of things because it takes instead of there being 3 or 6 sides times 2,
Right.
and then 6 more additional lineups for algae. So it takes it from your 18 total lineup positions down to 6 that you're lined up dead center on the side every single time. That means you're lined up on all the algae and you can score right or left. So there's a lot of simplification that comes from that kind of design.
Well, the other thing is if you're using a vision assist, if you're we have one camera on each side because if we're trying to go left, it's harder to see the April tag if you happens to be to the right of you, right?
Right.
And so now it's just you can put one in the center and just be center.
Yeah, that's I think that is the strategy. So like I said at the beginning of the season, even on a reveal night, this is a software game and specifically a vision game. So for alignment. Now people can drive practice that, and they have, I'm sure. But that extra alignment speed, simplifying it down to one center position would be good. We looked at that to see if we could figure that out. Never came up with anything quite right. It was like, well, that's in the way of this, and how do you get? Because
strategy more simple, design more complex.
The strategy was like that's got to be the strategy, and it's like, well, that's 6.5 inches apart. Let me see, how do I get?
Yeah, it's cool to see the Neutrons kind of just pivot deal for being able to score either side.
Right. So 343 also has a very unique design, and like I said, 1102 and the Ramrod 6366 has a very unique design. Now I've seen some other designs or some other CADs that are similar, pass through elevator architecture, that type of thing.
Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, I think John from 1102 had made any comment on 1678s. No, it was 1678s are who's Chief Delphi thread, but making any comment of, it looks like we designed a similar robot.
So so John laid that out there. I'll let him lay that out there. But yeah.
But yeah, that would be a fun robot to build, I think, for his. It seems like they have 3 or 4 different intakes, and so curious to see how it turns out. But
me too. I've seen pictures of it. I'm wanting to see it in person.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, looking forward to some South Carolina action.
Yeah, and so I think, bottom line, I definitely think a pure kit bot will rank in top 8. That's my prediction. Just got the luck of the draw.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing too. Once the season gets any more underway or once people get their legs underneath themselves, is that outside of setting yourself apart with a climber or making sure you're converting on all those auto RP, it's a lot of it really comes down to luck of the schedule. And if you have an alliance that can put together that coral RP or anything else, so you got to convert on all those chances.
Yeah, I think as the game moves on, it becomes less schedule dependent, right? Because the teams that get a luckier schedule, right, don't necessarily benefit as more RP start being scored at each match. And so I think the teams that are going to do well are going to just be able to rise up, hopefully this year.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. I'm saying that group that does rise up, the schedule is going to be what separates that group out from each other. Sure.
Yeah.
But yeah. All right. So with that being said about Hartsville, we'll move on to our Dalton preview for our next PCH event in Georgia. We'll go through our defending champions of 69-19, 17-46, and 47-01, able to take away the Blue Banners last season. We've got a number of robots making their debut performance, and I think there's at least a couple making their second appearance this early. We have, I think, 38-15 is going back to back, so they'll be there. 56-08, who put together, I believe, a decent performance, and Gainesville will be there, and then 67-12 is the third robot that'll then be making their back-to-back performance for knocking their two district events out of the way in the first 2 weeks of the season. But otherwise, we have any more heavy hitters kind of making their debut of the season. Those teams would be then Walton Robotics, of course, one of our perennial contenders. 69-19 is another robot that, or another team that really tends to come out of the gates quick. They also then tend to have an interesting season schedule that they'll intentionally plan for rebuilds. I think they passed up the rebuild last year upon figuring out that the rebuild was going to look very similar to their existing robot. So they said, we'll just keep this one and ran with it. But curious to see how that plays out and what their initial robot might look like. For some other teams we have on the radar, obviously, we got to talk about 68-29 and the ignition of their season.
You got to keep our connectors connected, hopefully, right?
What's your confidence level heading into your first event of the season, Brian?
It's a first event, right? It's always be working kinks out. We got new people on drive team, right? So there are a lot of different factors in there. I'm optimistic that we'll be fine, right? Will we be heading, competing for 1 or 6 or 7? We'll see, right? We've done a lot well, right? So, but there's still, we always want to have more programming time, which we'd like to get. We'd like to get more drive time. So, going in optimistic,
that's
but
what
realistic.
I will say from Gainesville observations is that there's a lot of benefit to automation of that scoring procedure. Instead of human driving just offers so much error in the misalignment or the difficulty of being able to tell if you're lined up quite right. So
going into the season, talking about autons, what we'd want to do, and looking at what was happening at Gainesville, I think Link was doing 2. They're dropping 1 on maybe up, high, down level 1. So you weren't seeing a lot of multi-game piece autons. It was still fairly straightforward, and I sort of expect that's what Dalton's going to kind of look like again. I think you're going to have the same situation as Gainesville, where you're not going to have just a couple bots, right? It's going to be a pack there, I think. Flying Legion is doing well from what I've heard, and so I expect them to do, to be right there. So, it's who can keep your connectors connected and who has some more experience there. I will say this: I would give the edge to Commodores and Walton, since they have their own DE field.
Right.
So that's helpful.
Playing driver practice.
Yeah. I think it's gonna be a fun event. I still think it plays the same way. Everybody sort of, for the most part, first-time players. We'll see how it goes, though.
Yeah, it's interesting to see. I don't know if Walton's a little bit behind schedule compared to usual, but from their build blog, it looks like they're getting underway for getting some drive practice in on their robot and finding a few of the kinks that you'd find early in the season. So curious to see what they can get smoothed out by this upcoming weekend. But it looks like they have a climber that might need a little bit of tweaking here and there, but otherwise scoring. Seems like it's working, but I'd be curious on how up to speed they get this early in the season for that automated process, or what their autons might look like. But yeah.
And Commodore's in the same boat. They were later than normal going to driving, but they are now, right? So even though that they may be later than normal, it's still they're able to make that time up. And I think Walton will be sort of that same position, right? They're always about just get my driver stick time, and we will make that valuable. So
yeah, there's any pause of like, oh well, maybe they're a little off this season, but yeah, like you're saying, those are a couple of the teams you'd trust the most in the district to be able to pull it together, especially for an early season performance.
Looking forward to it. So the other things about the scouting stuff, we're actually be joint scouting with Commodore's. Got a scouting app put together that we're using, we're sharing with them. So if teams are trying to figure out how to do scouting and not sure how to do scouting, if you want to come see me, I'll show you what we've done. It's a simple drag and drop app from real life data. I know 1261 uses it. We use it, but we actually have new features this year where it pushes all the data to Google Sheets. So you could do your fancy form, which is a mobile app, and then Google Sheets in the back end.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah.
Sounds like fun. I'll give a couple other shout outs to teams to look out for. 4112 had a really good season last year, so curious to see what they're putting together this year. I did notice on PCH Discord that this team is either going through the ringer for either rebuilding their robot or just getting it programmed. So hopefully they have an easier week for the rest of the week than apparently they have over the last few days. 1648, talked to one of their mentors a little bit earlier this season. Haven't gotten a recent read on things, but they seemed like they had some confident feelings early in the season of picking a good robot and a design that would do well. So curious to see what they wind up with. And then Team 1002 is one of the first ones I saw over at Walton's DE field. They have a very similar, I don't know, the West Coast products, minimal competitive concept, or what the easiest comparison is on that, the archetype, but it's very much the large chute and then coral spore up front, and I believe it's also an algae mechanism up front. So looking forward to seeing what they can pull off this season as well, because I think they've poured a little bit more effort into their FRC robot this year. So looking forward to seeing what those teams come up with, as well as any surprises that we might not see. Always looking forward to covering new teams as they pop out of the woodwork and make some improvements year over year or event to event. So yeah, looking forward to seeing what we have there. All right. Any other thoughts on Dalton, Brian? We cannot hear you. You got to talk louder.
That's a great point, Brian. I appreciate that, man. You nailed it.
Yeah. We'll put a voiceover over Brian later. Yeah, just keep moving your mouth, Brian.
Oh, that we got a right for them. All right, cool.
He says, Thomas, you're always right. I wish we would listen to you more often.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Nope, sorry. Yes.
So I was gonna, I got this headset started giving me problems. Anyway, So yeah, I happened to see 1648, and they got an interesting thing they have going on. There's something they saw on Chief Delphi they implemented, which is they basically have an integrated ratcheting device, 3D printed, inside with their motor, right with the gearbox. So it goes to the ultraplanetary, versus planetary, but it goes in between the two. And it's got a little servo so that when you drive up, hit servo, it engages a little rocker to flip the direction, and it won't backdrive. So I'm interested to see how that does. I think we may have printed one of those and give that a shot. So
Cool.
So it's a cool idea they saw. I'm like, I like that.
Is this for a climber or for holding an elevator position?
Climber.
Okay, gotcha.
Yep. Yeah. How do you, you turn off power or turn off or disable the robot, right? And you get, most of these climbs aren't really high off the ground. So you could try maybe rely on your gearbox to be slow enough to not have you drop, but this was a simple thing to add in.
Yeah, I saw a couple teams on the practice field that they would get up in the air, and as it starts drooping, they're like 1, 2, 3. Okay, it was 3 seconds. I was like, that's not how that works.
Yeah.
But awesome. Now that you're speaking again, any last words on Dalton?
No, I think it's going to be a fun event. I'm looking forward to getting out there, seeing everybody again. I think it's going to be a fun season. The game is playing well. A lot of teams are doing well. And I think it's going to be a blast.
Gotcha. It's one of the events I'll be missing out on this season in addition to Albany, but I should be at all the other events. But yeah, looking forward to seeing what happens up in Dalton. All right. With that said, we can have, I guess, a couple of our donut shop wagers to address, namely how many RP to rank number 8 at your first district event in your district. We had Brian at 27. David had guessed 26 for PCH, 22 for FSC this upcoming weekend. Thomas at 25, myself at 28. Ian, again, less and less of which than we thought, had guessed 12. Our number 8 ranking team was 8866 at 30 ranking points. So we all were a little bit under. I at least had the highest number, so I'll take credit for that. But let's see.
So I said 9 wins for the 8th rank is pretty stout.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. In the 4 RP world, right? The early on, the number 1 would have in the 22 to 25 range, depending on the year. And so having that jump, I think, did Link get like 42 RP?
Yeah.
46.
46 RP, right?
Was 42?
Yeah, Bean had 43.
43.
Right. The interesting thing was I saw some rankings in Michigan. I forget what the numbers were, but I think in Michigan, the one random event that a friend of mine went to, I think they ended up like fit in the mid to low 50s. And so that Michigan team coming down, it's Michigan, right?
Yeah. And since they're coming week 2, I'm presuming that they're turning right around and playing in Michigan. This is their warm-up event. They're not like coming down here to tinker. They're coming down here to practice. So that I'm expecting them to come shooting out of the gate. So yeah, the rank points I think this year are driven mainly by that. A little bit of luck of the draw on the Auton one, and do you have a climber?
Yeah, it really prioritizes efforts to get out there and help teams that don't have an Auton. We're going to get you driving so we can get this RP this match instead of. There was also a clever mechanic. I think Link. I forget if they input or actually used it in match or not. It was an auton we discussed on Bean, but I think I had I was a little bit off about it because so there's the auton starting line. Your robot has to be starting on top of that line anywhere with your, I think, bumpers crossing it. But you can cross that line or move off of that line in either direction, I believe, and still qualify for the move off the line qualification. So
yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, if again, if I'm not mistaken, this is how I understood it. But so my initial thought was that if you had an alliance member that didn't have an auton, is that you could start behind them and simply push them over the line and then move around and continue your own auton. Link, I think, was any more intelligent about it for how they read the rules, and that they can start in front of their teammate, nudge them backwards off the line, and then continue forward for their own autonomous. Instead of kind of having to drive out and around their teammate, they can drive backwards an inch or two and then drive forward themselves for a less interrupted auton that would still move their alliance partner off the line. So.
So they were, bumpers were covering that 1 inch and 1 inch of the tape. Right?
Yeah, either that or they were a little bit cockeyed. But I think if I remember correctly, the one time they attempted it, I think there was with another swerve drive. Their wheels wound up getting cockeyed, and they weren't able to quite push them across the line.
Yeah, that's clever.
So
some innovative efforts.
There wasn't much processor action, right?
Correct.
But if you want cooperation, do more of those auton ranking points, and all the teams will be helping everybody else out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Cooperation is not really a thing. They keep trying to design it, and this year they missed again.
Well, I think it flops this year until you get, I don't know if it's until you get to Worlds, but unless both alliances feel like they have a shot at getting enough coral up there, I just think we don't, it's hard for, I think, PCH to have that confidence level on both sides of the field. But if you don't have the coral scoring capabilities on your side, like what's your motivation for doing the processor? It's like, okay, I'm going to help you get some RP, but I'm not getting anything out of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, if you think about it, when you start getting to the point where people start doing algae, then you get better coral scores. They are less likely to need it as much, right? Because you get two bots out there that could, are performing, maybe the top 10 teams at that event. They may not need that reduction from down one level, right? So we'll see how it goes. The cooperation in last year worked sometimes, right? But again,
cooperation, yeah. It really wasn't a thing. It's just both sides of the field have the skill. I guess you had to have the skill last year and push the button, versus this year you just have to have the skill.
I think it worked better in 23 when it was the cooperation was a natural part of the game.
Yes, agreed. Agreed. But you could still deny it in at lower levels of play.
Yes, we may have done that.
Don't know.
Yeah, that, and I don't like mechanics too much that you can run the entire duration of quals and then it just be useless during elims to now have this mechanic that doesn't count for anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess for anything interesting anybody's seen outside of our districts, I think there was an interesting match. I think it was up in Minnesota, if I remember correctly. I think wound up with 15 algae and 1 barge, but it got there in an interesting fashion in that one alliance had a really good processor robot that just grabbed all the algae and put it in their processor, and it was a human player that wound up lofting at least the majority of these algae into their barge instead. So it's interesting because being scored by that method, it really inflates scores on both sides of the field because you're one team scoring 6 points and the other scoring 4 points.
Yeah.
So both scores are just shooting up. Obviously, one a little bit faster than the other, but just the amount of points that 15 algae represents is pretty crazy.
So here's a strat. What if you like do the ring thing last year with the amp, right? Put two of them put one next to it, and then drop one in, and immediately drop the second one in, and they can't clear them both fast enough.
You're just saying for like the very end of the match of try to sneak a 6-point one in without them being able to.
Without the human player being able to take the shot.
Right. That and if they don't clear it fast enough, it's also a penalty.
Well.
Okay. Yep.
You're only allowed to have one back there.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Let's design a robot around that one.
Yeah. There's a transfer. Now I don't. We'll see what happens with the process, right?
Point if you put it through 3, 2, 1, you put one through. Is that 6 points, and they don't get the chance to pick it up and shoot it?
I believe, if I heard correctly, I think there was an instance in Texas where I believe a human player shot an algae 2 seconds after the match ended. Mm-hmm. Just went by the time they actually got the algae that was scored at 0 seconds or 1 second, but that it was not counted for some reason. But yeah, it doesn't seem correct, but it's obviously an odd thing that a human player is grabbing a ball after the match ends.
Right.
But the rules pretty clearly state that it's or from what I'm familiar with, at least, that it's after 3 seconds.
After 5 seconds.
Or 3 seconds or 5 seconds or whatever it is hopefully those kind of things get called any more consistently. But I certainly understand the temptation of trying to score it so last second that the other human player doesn't get the chance to actually score it.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Huh. So instead of having a deep clamor, you're sitting there right at the processor. 3, 2, 1.
Mm-hmm.
6 points.
Yep.
There's your shallow climb, right?
That's your shallow.
Yep.
Interesting. Huh.
Yeah, I think I saw a couple of shallow climbers, but I don't know how often they were actually used. But
yeah, I don't know. I couldn't see. So, I did watch some on First Updates. They had some match, recap kind of stuff, and in this game, it'd be nice if, in Georgia they did what in first, which is you get the full field up top, and then you have the spotlights where you're like looking at each side, so you get a better view of what's going on. Because I know when I was working with our scouts, I'm like, you kind of have to know where level 2 is at, because sometimes you can't really see, especially early on, because there's a lot of algae there. If for people on the stream, it's even harder. And having that 3 view would be nice.
Right, it would be.
Mm-hmm.
Okey-dokey. Well, it's about time to wrap them up.
Yeah, about that time. I think we did well on our timing. For keeping this in the ballpark of an hour, but happy you all joined us for some more Peach Pit coverage. Looking forward to covering more of the season as it goes on. Looking forward to seeing some more awesome robots as more and more teams compete for the first time. But looking forward to seeing what you have, both Peachtree District and South Carolina. But keep up the action, and we'll see you this weekend in Hartsville and Dalton. But until then, we'll see you next week.